Hello and welcome to your first animation tutorial. In this video you guys are going to learn how to create a bouncing ball using squash and stretch, and we're going to be using some of the arcs. So we're going to be using arcs as well, so we're really utilising the 12 principles of animation here. Well, those two principles of animation here. We're going to be looking at some of the other principles of animation with future animations that we create. But the first thing that I'd like to do in this video is to set up our Maya project properly, as we would in industry. So the first thing I want to do is I want to click on File up here, go to our project window, and I want to create a brand new project. This is going to be called Bouncing Ball for Tutorial, and then I'm going to put 17th Jan 22, just to put the date on it. And it's quite good to get into a habit of putting the date of when you're doing stuff. I'd also probably put your name instead. So instead of tutorial, you guys could put your first name, then ball, and then the date. And that's a good habit to get into when creating animations in Maya. I'm also going to make sure that I put it into the right folder. So I have a folder on my desktop that I like to go to. So it's my animation folder, my Maya projects, and then I'm going to be putting it in here. And then I'm going to hit accept. Once I've done that, I have to go ahead and set my project to Bouncing Ball Tutorial 17th of January 22. And I'm going to set that. The next thing I want to do is I want to set Maya up just so it's nicely, well, it's got everything that we need in it. It's got the right windows, we can see everything clearly, and we can start animating and getting our bouncing ball in. So we're going to head over to here on the left hand side, sorry, and we're going to right click, and we can go to 3 panes split top, which will show us something like this. So we've got our side minus X view. I probably want this as the side X view. So anything we do, I want to be moving right to the right instead of the left. We don't necessarily need our outliner here either, but I like to keep mine in there as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to View on this first pane. I'm going to go down to View along axis and X. Showing, and now that will be going positively to the X, so our Z axis will go along the right hand side. Cool, we've got a perspective view, so we don't need to do anything about that. And then I want to change this bottom panel to our graph editor, so I'm going to go to Panels, Panel, and Graph Editor, which should get something a little bit like this now. So now that I've got that set up, I want to set up the keyframes at the bottom. So I want to start on keyframe 101, and I want to go right up to 200. Cool. The reason for that we start on frame 101 is so if there's any changes to be made at the beginning of the animation, we have 100 frames to play with beforehand, which is a good habit to get into whenever you're animating anything in Maya as well. Awesome, so we've got that. I'm just going to set this to the animation at the top, and then we're pretty much all set up. Is there anything else I need? No. Okay, so now that I've got that, I'm going to import the ball that you guys will be using this week. So I'm going to head up to File, Import, and then I need to go to my desktop again, find my animation folder, go to my rigs, and find my ultimate ball. And we're going to import that. Once we've got that in, it'll take a moment to get that into the software. And when it is, I can start showing you the rig a little bit. So, if you want to change between these panels, you can hit spacebar and bring it to a full screen. And we've got this rig now, so we have a few different controllers. So this being our world controller at the bottom, this is one that we would only ever use to position the entire animation to begin with. Oh, and I've just noticed that our frames have gone back to 0, so we're going to just change that back to 200 on all of this. Awesome. in fact, before we do that, I'm going to save the project as well. So save scene as. It will take us to the proper folder. So we're in our bouncing ball tutorial, 17th of January 22. And I'm just going to put bouncing ball underscore version 1. And I'm going to hit save as. So now we've got this bouncing ball in here, as well as having our own file for it in that folder. Another thing that we could do, which is usually quite useful, is to copy the bouncing ball into the right folder. So if I go to my ultimate ball, so if we copy this file into our Maya projects and this tutorial, in our scenes, we can put it here so that we know that we've got that there as well. So whenever we move this folder around, we have everything we need within it. Okay, so there's a few things that I can show you here. We've got a few different things on the side here that we can change between. We can go through all the different ball types, a few visibilities, whether or not it's smooth, which we would probably want when we're rendering, but it's not so important right now. And I was on our world, so we're going to use this to position it probably towards the end when we start getting a bit more of it going across the Z-axis. So we're going to go back to here. What you'll notice, there's a bit of a bug with Maya 22. Oh, before we do that, I want to set this so we're not selecting the mesh at all. We're only wanting to select our controllers. And something to note is we have a bit of squash and stretch here. We have what we would use to move it, which is nice. But Maya 22, it has a bit of a bug. So whenever I go into one of these views and come back out, my graph editor decides to play up a little bit. So what I would do to fix that is I'll just open it up in the graph editor here, so it opens up properly, and then I can just set that back to the graph editor. Awesome. So we might as well get started on some animating then. So I'm just going to bring this down a bit because we're not going to need a great deal. And I'm going to go to our first frame and we're going to have this controller selected. So what I want to do is I want to place the ball on its starting position, and I can use that with the x-axis, well, the side view and our perspective view. So I'm probably going to zoom out here first of all, and then I'm just going to bring this up to about there. That's nice. That's high enough there, which is quite nice. And we get let's change that to 7 then, just to get a nice round number. And then we can start figuring out where we're going where. So if we hit S on our keyboard, we can set a keyframe on our slider, our timeline at the bottom. And we want to, in fact, before we do that as well, really, we should set our project to the right frames per second. Mine is already here. Yours might be on play every frame, so we need to make sure we change that to 24 frames per second. You just hit save there. We also want auto key on, so auto key is going to be useful when we're setting our keyframes. Our playback speed is going to be 24 frames per second, so we, over the course of this 100 frames or so, we're going to bounce about 4 times. So because we've got our first keyframe set, we can go all the way over to 24 frames and set another keyframe. And then what we can do is we can go to about halfway in, maybe, it doesn't really matter, 112 or 113, we're going to go to that keyframe, and we're just going to bring us back down to 0. So we can use this number over here to set us back down to 0. And then we get some movement a bit like this, which isn't all that usual. It's not a usual movement, so it does look a bit strange in our in our perspective view. So if we watch that, it's getting slower when it gets to this point here, which isn't what we want. We want it to snap back up quite quickly. So we're going to come to our graph editor, we're going to select this tangent at the bottom, and we're going to break the tangents so that we can move each tangent individually, and you'll see that we can get a bit of a V here. So if I can make sure that I've got our tangent selected, and because we're on our Y, we can make sure that we're only looking at our Y axis as well. And really here we want to have a bit of a, almost like a seagull kind of feeling for this, and what we'll see when we play this back through is it will snap. Let's get right in on here and bring it right the way back. Get a bit more of a snap. Might also be worth, while we're here actually, to just make sure that these are level. So then we get that really snappy movement, and it's coming back up. In fact, we could probably push that a bit further. Get it quite snappy. There we go, we've got a really nice snap there. So that snaps back up, which is really cool. Awesome, so that is the bounce. Like I said, we do have squash and stretch controls. What I would probably do at this point is start copying and pasting these controls as well. So in our graph editor, we could select all of this. In fact, we should do the squash and stretch as well, because that will be nice and easy to copy and paste as well. So when we get to frame 12, well, we want to set our initial keyframe here as well at 101 to say no changes have been made here, and we want to do the same at 124. Awesome. In fact, we don't want to use this top controller, we want to use the bottom one. So we're going to use that. Going to go to 124, do the same thing, and then we are going to be going to frame 112, and we're going to squash this right down. Sorry, again, we're going to go from the top. It's been a little while since I've done a bouncing ball, but it won't be too difficult here. It's just making sure that we're deciding the right thing, and it's imperative that we get a nice squash here. Doesn't need to be, you don't need to go overboard with it, but if you go right to the bottom, we get a nice crisp sort of movement. Okay, so that we've got that there, and then we want to make sure that this is fairly stretched out just before and just after our, in fact, what value did we have here? Control C, let's go to this one and go to Control V, and then we should have a nice squash and stretch here. So play that back. Yep, beautiful. So we've got some really nice movement there, and if we look at that in our perspective, we get a really nice feel for that there as well. So what we would do now is we'd start looking at duplicating this and having this happen over and over again. So if we grab all of this and then we go over to edit and copy, and then make sure we click off everything and just have this final part selected here, we can then paste. We can then paste. Did we not copy it properly? And paste. We need to be on that frame as well, that would be useful. And then we can hit A, and then we see that, and then we can do the same again. Control C, go to the right frame this time, make sure we only have that final part selected, and we can paste again, and then we've got our bouncing ball, but we only have the bouncing at this point, so we need to start getting our squash and stretch on this as well. So we used our top controller for this, which looks quite nice. It fits quite nicely as well. What I might do is I just make sure that these are fairly even, and this all works quite nicely. Let's try and make sure that these are even as well. Beautiful. And then just like before, we're going to select everything, hit Control C, go to our 24th frame, make sure we only have that one selected. Make sure we're only on this as well. Probably best to just stay on this. Control C, Control V, and then I'm going to hit A to see all of it, and then I'm going to do the same here as well. Control C, go to the final frame that we're at, Control V, and then we should have a nice bouncing ball here now. Awesome. So our final frame on both of these controllers is 193. So I'd probably just make sure that we take this back to 193 on both of these. Awesome. So that is our bouncing ball in a nutshell, just for the initial movement. So what we can start to look at now is how it's going to bounce, whether it's bouncing downstairs, whether it's bouncing down a few different things. And I think that's the task that I'm going to allow you guys to get on with and figure out for yourselves at this point. You have the initial version of a bouncing ball here. If you could follow this to this point, and then I'd like to see some set building and trying to create this bounce going downstairs or bouncing off of different things. And I'll let you guys have at it. Alright then, take care, bye bye.